Good day, everyone. I'm Matt Harrison, and you are listening to the Geary Cast, the Malaga fan podcast for all the Gearys out there. As we head into Segunda's match day 15, although technically match day 14 for Malaga, Malaga remain undefeated away from home. Of course, the caveat here is that Malaga have drawn all 6 away games and are yet to win on the road. But they're on the road again this coming weekend as they head northeast to La Romareda to take on Real Zaragoza. It's the start of a tough run of games for Malaga as we visit and are visited by some of the big dogs of Spanish Segunda over the coming weeks. And speaking of the big dogs of the Spanish Segunda, I'm joined by 2 mighty Great Danes of Spanish Segunda podcasting here in the form of my GearyCast co-host and our special guest today. So first of all, I'll introduce Nick Bell. I almost called you Nick Marquez then, weirdly, Nick. But Nick Bell, how are you, Nick?
Yeah, that would have been strange. I'm very good, Matt, and I'm quite revered and honoured to be classed as a Great Dane of Spanish Segunda football. But still petite compared to our special guest tonight.
Yeah, and you know, before we introduce our special guest, I should say to you, Nick, happy birth of Antonito Day. He's 18 today. Have you celebrated the day of our Saviour?
He has. I had some special birthday cake earlier, which just said 122 on it, and celebrated how we should always celebrate.
Excellent stuff. Also, as I've already touched upon, we have a special guest with us this evening. He's one of the co-hosts of the Spanish Segunda Show podcast, and he has spent many years riding the roller coaster that comes with being a fan of Real Zaragoza. We are delighted to welcome back to the Geary Cast, Liam Bambridge. How are you doing, Liam?
Pretty good, thank you. Lovely to be on again, and obviously the opportunity to talk about Zaragoza. I have to keep a bit more a neutral perspective when I'm doing the Spanish Segunda show, but the chance to speak unadulterated Zaragoza stuff is a real rare treat for me.
Yeah, this is Real Zaragoza after dark stuff tonight. You can go both cannons. I should ask.
Usually what happens, Matt, is that when I start talking too much about Alex says, right, enough about Zaragoza, let's talk about something else.
Fun free tonight. Just before we talk about that, you were in Spain the past weekend or the weekend before? I can't remember. How was your trip?
No, it's been a long time, unfortunately, far too long, Matt. No, yeah, it's it's a great shame that, but I am going to change that very soon. We're going to Cordoba next weekend, and obviously we've got the plans to go to see Malaga, obviously at the end of January as part of our Segunda show weekend in Andalusia, hoping to get a game. I'm out late Friday night, back late Sunday night, so I'm really hoping Malaga's game does not fall on a Friday evening or Monday evening, but sod's law it probably will. But yeah, a couple of trips to Spain planned over the next 6 or 8 weeks, which I'm really looking forward to.
Excellent stuff. Obviously, we'll do a little bit of news first. There's not really much news coming out of the club since we recorded earlier in the week, but I'm sure many of our listeners will be aware that there's been, some unfortunate scenes in Malaga this past week with the sort of re-emergence of Storm Dana, the same storm that hit the Valencia region with obviously very fatal consequences 2 weeks ago. It's come back. It's not quite been as destructive throughout the Malaga province. There was red alerts out and things like that. So I think, with what happened in Valencia, there was much more precautions. Malaga City itself, did have some bad flooding and, to bring it back to Malaga Club de Football, I'm sure if anybody's seen the photos and the videos of the river or Rio Guadalmedina next to La Rosaleda, they'll see there's actually a lot of water in it where it's usually dry. But yeah, that's obviously had an impact in the city this week. And obviously I'm down the road in Marbella, which, hasn't been hit so hard apart from having a bit of a crazy storm 3 o'clock this morning. But, we're hoping everyone has stayed safe and, the red alert seems to be going away in the coming hours or perhaps tomorrow morning. But, hopefully people are staying safe. We should perhaps mention, Nick, that has had an impact on our football club in perhaps, a more technical aspect in regards of footballing that we've not trained for the past, I think, 2 days. I don't think we trained today either. That was the story. Is that a worry for you in regards of our game against Zaragoza?
Purely from a selfish point of view, yeah, definitely, because this is a competitive league, and marginal gains play a huge part in form and results, especially when two teams like Málaga and Real Zaragoza, who are in good form, are going head to head. But you can't put a price on safety, which is a weird sentence, but an accurate one. And yeah, it was the right thing to do. We've seen obviously what's happened in the Valencia region. We've seen obviously what happened to Malaga a few weeks ago. So better to be safe than sorry. And I think as well, the training ground got really badly hit. It was quite flooded as well. So even if we wanted to risk it, I don't think we could have done, because it was all underwater.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I believe I think they have all trained today with no issues. Because I should say, obviously, it wasn't just the senior team which didn't train; the youth teams haven't trained. So hopefully, I've been out and about today, and things seem to be back to normal-ish down this part. So hopefully that's the case in the city tomorrow. But yeah, there's not really too much more news coming out of Malaga. So we'll go straight into this week's preview. Well, I've just mentioned La Rosaleda there, Liam. I should ask perhaps before we talk about the footballing side of things, how is La Romareda looking at the moment? Because obviously you've jumped the gun ahead of La Rosaleda with the renovations. How's it looking this season so far?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I think initially the plan was to just basically demolish everything and then try and find put some temporary structure up there. We're talking about a 20,000 seater temporary structure, which seemed quite ambitious to me. Usually you have one temporary stand, don't you? Not 4 temporary stands. And I wasn't quite sure where they were going to put it. And I think that idea eventually got shelved. So the plan now is essentially to demolish one stand at a time. So they've just knocked down one stand. The Gol Sur has been knocked down, and then they'll build that this season. And then next season they're knocking down one of the I think it's either, I'm not sure which side of the ground it is, but one of the 2 sides of the ground, and then I think the other side of the ground, and then the other behind the goal, the goal north, they will go last of all. So it's a long-term project. I think it's looking to finish it sort of around about 2028, middle of 2028, or even later. And the thinking behind it is obviously they want to be one of the host cities for the 2030 World Cup, and I think they've got quite a good chance of doing that. But I suppose that's their timeline. They're looking to get it done, probably 12 to 18 months before that tournament takes place. So yeah, it's a long project, but when they have finished it, it does look like it's going to be absolutely amazing. A 43,000 seater stadium, very, very high tech, and it did need to be done. Obviously, there's a lot of attachment to the old Stadium Romareda, but it's looking very tired nowadays, and I think it was time for not a refurb, but a complete rebuild. But we've got to be patient, as with most things in Zaragoza. We have to be patient.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, is it sort of been met with is the sentiment strong enough that people don't want it to go? Because I think we've spoke about it on the podcast, Nick, that we've said Malaga do need a new stadium, because obviously we want to go for the 2030 World Cup ourselves as well. But in the past sort of couple of months, I feel like people want to protect this La Rosaleda a bit more, because it sounds like it might screw the club over in the short term at least. But
yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you think, well, in many cases, even you look at the biggest clubs in the world like Arsenal, there was certainly building a squad with their hands slightly tied behind their back, or at least one hand tied behind their back, weren't they, when they were building that stadium, because of the financial commitment? I'm not clear about that, to be honest. I don't think many Zaragoza fans would want to wait another 5 seasons with a vastly reduced budget just to have a new stadium. But it seems to be they're going to be able to balance the two, and it's it's meant to be the centerpiece of the whole community, not just Zaragoza, but the whole Comunidad Autónoma de Aragon, which probably suggests that the government are putting up a bit of money towards it. So, and obviously we have had some new owners quite recently, so I think the funding's okay. I don't think we'll be splashing the cash in big style over the next 4 or 5 years, but it looks to me like it's feasible and viable, rather than absolutely bankrupting us.
And the new owners. Oh, sorry, go on, Nick.
I was going to say, I suppose that's the difference between. You can maybe look at it from both ways. Maybe Malaga, being the city that it is and where it's based and the connections it has around the world, it's probably got maybe 1 foot already through the door for being a host city. So the need to get the stadium getting going and getting that redeveloped sort of surpasses the feelings of the club and everybody else. Unfortunately, it just has to be done. But there is this short-term pain, as you were talking about, Matt, because Malaga aren't in control of their own destiny here. They don't own the stadium. It's not theirs. So that short-term hit that they're going to take to the coffers is concerning when we don't have, 2 pennies to rub together anyway. But in the long term, like you say, if you get past that and you look at the benefits of being in a stadium, as you said, Liam, like this, the potential for investment, the potential for future income is going to vastly outweigh the short-term pain after the World Cup, especially as well. But I'm very much on your case as well, Matt. I'll be sad to lose La Rosaleda the way it is. She's perfect the way she is. She doesn't need to change.
Yeah. So, and I guess let's just tick it off our Real Zaragoza bingo card. Are they going to keep the big nets at the new one?
Well, I certainly hope so, Matt, because the big nets are they're part of the folklore of Zaragoza, aren't they? Everybody knows when they go there. Look at those nets; they are amazing, and yeah, I would certainly hope so. It's difficult, isn't it? We've talked about it as many times before. Modernisation sometimes necessary, but it comes at a price, doesn't it? I quite like tired and grubby myself, but I understand that it's not the way forward. That if somebody offers to put together a 43,000 seater stadium and with the inevitable VIP boxes, it's not a great commercial venture right now. It's full of people who've loved Zaragoza, the team all their lives, But realistically, you need to move with the times, don't you? And I love La Rosaleda. I would be very sad if it's completely taken down and completely rebuilt, because often you lose a lot of the character of a stadium when you do that, don't you? I think it's a very hard job to build a new stadium that still has character. And La Rosaleda is absolutely full of character. And I think La Romareda is as well, but it is also not falling down exactly, but it is really not in a good state. So I guess you have to, rather than renovate it, you have to start again.
The one thing I'll say about... Sorry, go on, Matt.
I was just going to say the thing I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, with places like La Romareda and La Rosaleda, the thing that gives me faith is the new grounds in Spain, I think, are usually pretty good. And they do San Mamés, I think, is brilliant as a new ground. I know the Bernabeu seems to be a bit divisive, but I think it's interesting. I don't think it's boring. I've been to Villarreal Stadium. That's really cool, I think. So I do have faith in that they seem to get the new stadiums right here, I think. But
yeah, I'd agree with that. Fingers crossed for both of us, eh?
Because Jorge Mas must just love building stadiums a bit, because he's also building the Miami Freedom Park as well, isn't he? So he's got, fingers in many pies in new stadiums at the minute. So, it must be his thing.
Yeah, I think probably even more than Inter Miami do. But obviously, how much longer can he keep Messi playing for as well? Presuming that's part of the reasoning behind it, sell a few more corporate seats at £2,000.
I was going to perhaps throw this up at the end if I had a chance, but since you've mentioned his name, I read a weird sort of athletic article about Real Zaragoza earlier in the week, and their sort of love for Messi, which I didn't really know about, because I think he scored like a goal early in his career there and got a standing ovation, and there's this thing about Inter Miami playing Real Zaragoza, which I wasn't aware of till this week.
No, I mean, that's the first issue that there was really with Mas when he took over. There was a suggestion that he would make Real Zaragoza the feeder team for Inter Miami, which, as you can imagine, went down like a lead balloon in Zaragoza. Who do you think you are, trying to make our team like a filial, basically? I think that's kind of slightly receded. It might still be in his plans, but he's certainly not mentioning it in public.
I suppose they've both got, obviously Inter Miami don't have that much history yet, but they've both got a love for South American players, and they, Real Zaragoza have had lots of South Americans.
Indeed, yes.
But at the moment, not so many at the moment.
No.
So let's talk about the current team. They're third in the league, Liam, which I'm sure you're enjoying hearing at the moment. Has this exceeded your pre-season expectations so far?
It's a cycle with that, Arthur. It's a bit like Groundhog Day. It has been for the last 8-10 years anyway, with one or two exceptions. You start the year feeling really optimistic. You usually start the year pretty well, and then usually by about this time things start to go wrong. I think the squad that had been assembled at the start of the season is significantly better than it has been for the last few seasons. I think last year when we started really, really well with 5 wins in a row, personally, I just thought we were overperforming massively. This year, you do look at the team and think this is a decent set of players. We've had a few injuries, but ultimately, it doesn't hugely surprise me that we've done all right so far. But it's such a tight league, isn't it? Third's great, but you lose 3 in a row, suddenly you're 14th. So no one's getting carried away. We've been disappointed many times before in that 10-year period. So ultimately, cautious optimism, as is usually the case at this time of year, followed by depression for about the next 6 months.
Yeah, I think obviously we spent our year down the well, and I lost touch with the Segunda a little bit, and I was very surprised at the start of the season when I saw manager Real Zaragoza Victor Fernandez. I was like, what, again? Is he still like absolutely adored? Because this is his fourth time or fifth? Fourth, I think.
Yeah, he's been. The weird thing about Victor Fernandez is when he came back, he hadn't been involved in football at that level for a long time. By my Spanish football standards, a couple of years at least, if not longer. And I think it was very much. I sensed with it was very much. We're in a crisis. Let's turn to Victor again. A bit like Tony Parks back in the day at Blackburn, let's wheel him out again and let's just win a few games and scrape ourselves. And that was exactly what happened. We just stayed up last season. I think just a couple of games into the season, and we messed up. I think the Santander's prospects in the process of getting into the playoffs. So that was the start of their disastrous last two games. It was against us. And yeah, I must admit, I thought he'd step aside in the summer, but clearly instead of that, he's gone, you know what, I'm back. And if you really want me to hang around, I am going to run things from now on, which is quite funny, really, because obviously nobody's going to say no to Victor Fernandez. I worried that his legacy might be tainted by this because he had been at the game for a while. He has, with presumably the help of the sporting director, but with him pretty much calling the shots, assembled a decent squad. And so far, so good. But it's not really a long-term solution, is it really? I'm sure everyone would love him to lead us back to the promised land. Of course, he was desperately close to doing so last time he was at Zaragoza, the COVID season that killed us, when we were actually very close to going up, really. And then play stopped, and then we came back and just couldn't win a game. And then Luis Suarez went back to Watford because his loan period was over, and the playoffs were held in August rather than June because of COVID. And that was heartbreaking, I think, for a lot of Zaragoza fans. And it was a point where we were thinking, are we ever getting out of this league? And then Victor Fernandez walked away. So that was his last involvement with Zaragoza before, midway through last season. And so I suppose, the dream is that he gets it this time, that he gets us up. But we've got a lot of work to do before that happens. And if he doesn't this summer, I would think he'd probably step down at that point.
Yeah, just for those that don't know, Victor Fernandez was the guy that won the Cup Winners' Cup with Zaragoza in 1995, the famous Naim game. Just in case those people are wondering why we're making a big deal of him. I know Nick and I think Chris made a point of this. I like a bit of random trivia. Do you want my Victor Fernandez trivia question?
I would love it. Yeah.
Okay, so if you know the answer, Liam, because I don't know, maybe you know his whole career back to front. Maybe give it a second, but he is the last manager to do what? It's quite niche, this.
It's a great question. The last manager to do what?
I'll give you.
He's almost the last manager to win the European Cup Winners' Cup, isn't he? Probably.
Right. You're not far off with the sort of idea of the answer. It's not that, but
no. I mean, there were a few more afters, so I know that's not the answer. But is it something to do with that last Spanish manager to win the European Cup Winners' Cup?
I don't know. That might be a good shout. But
I'm going to say he's the first Spanish manager ever to be compared to Tony Parks. As far as niche, we like to go niche on this podcast, Liam. So that's definitely up there in terms of mentions.
Okay, I'll help you a bit, but it's still a bit of a trick question. He's the last manager to win a certain trophy. And it's a bit of a cheat, this.
Last manager to win a certain trophy. That's a really good question. No, I've no idea.
Okay, so it's always bad asking questions live, isn't it? Because you never really know how long to get to kill dead time. Okay, I'll put you out of your misery. He is the last ever manager to win the Intercontinental Cup because they changed it the next year to the Club World Cup. So he won it.
And who did he win that with then?
Porto.
Really? Wow, that's good knowledge. Yeah.
Against Once Caldas of Colombia, he beat. He took
Is that when Mourinho went to Chelsea, I assume, back then? Yeah.
But Liam's shock there is making me wonder, have I misread it?
No, not at all. No, do you know what? I'll be honest. I wasn't even aware that he'd managed outside Spain. So no, I'm confident that you're right about that.
Yeah, he was dead to leave when he went to Porto. If he's not a Real Zaragoza, he's not alive.
He was only on spell 3 or 4 at that stage. So I lost track of
somewhere else in Spain, didn't he? Was it?
Deportivo La Coruña, he was at.
That's it. Yeah, I can't remember. He did.
Not far from Porto, to be fair. Perhaps he just hopped across the border when Porto had enough of him.
Sorry to remind you of the glory days, Liam. Let's take you back to this season, which again is going pretty well. So obviously well, basically, you've just told us that you think you've got quite a good team put together. You're third in the league. You don't really draw many games, only drawn 2. You've won 7, lost 5. What sort of team are Malaga coming up against here, stylistically or whatever?
What's really interesting about that is that I would say that over the last few years, Zaragoza have been pretty dull to watch. I'll be honest, they've not been a good watch at all, partly because the players haven't been good enough and partly because the coaches on the whole have been relatively cautious in their approach. I think Fran Escribá, who's now somewhat more attacking at Granada with a much better squad, admittedly, is a good example of that. We've had numerous coaches since Victor Fernandez last stepped down that have erred on the side of caution, shall we say. It's not been a good watch this season, but to be fair, we haven't conceded many goals throughout all that time. Although we've not been brilliant, we've rarely received drubbings, we've rarely conceded many goals. It's been a lot of close games, which I'm sure you can relate to, the way your season's gone so far. This season, we're scoring goals for fun, but we also look incredibly open when we lose the ball. And I think that from that point of view, and obviously the other key thing for you this weekend is that Bachtar, who has been absolutely superb, and just as an indication that the stadium isn't completely tying their hands in terms of what they're spending, Bachtar costs €1.5 million. Now, you would know that in Segunda terms, that's a lot of money, and for Real Zaragoza to pay that sort of money, that's, in the last 5 years, they've never done that. So ultimately, that's a statement of intent. And of course, it was a bit of a risk. He came from Partizan Belgrade. So, he hadn't played, in Western Europe, and he's done really well. And of course, it's the international break this weekend. So he's not going to be playing against you. So that's good news for you, not for me. Soberon, who's been excellent, come from Aldense. He's also injured, I think, at the moment. So I'm not sure he'll play. Katie Bare, if he weren't injured, he'd be away with Albania. So it's a good week to play, as I would suggest. And also, as I say, even though I think we're good going forward, I think we do therefore look more open at the back. Obviously, we lost Alejandro Frances in the summertime, who's a superb player. He's gone to Girona. So although, defensively, we've not been bad. At the moment, we've got Calero, who you know very well from his Malaga days, playing at left back, because essentially the first choice left back to send, they got injured. And one of the few mistakes they've made this season, I think, in their squad recruitment is they didn't sign a backup left back. So they stuck a centre half out there on the left side of defence. He had a couple of awful games and got loads of stick. And then they've moved Calero to left back and put a youngster Luna at right back. So the defence is not bad, but I think through midfield is the key area. I think when we lose it, we look open, and it's a question of whether you've got the tools to sort of hit us on the counter attack. I think we're quite good in possession. We look good going forward, even without these, even with these problems we've got in terms of players missing this weekend. But I think we're susceptible to counter attacks.
Okay, it's interesting to say about the midfield, actually, because obviously we've got one of our players is of your former parish, Manu Molina.
Indeed,
we signed him from you. This season, he's been absolutely incredible with his level of performances, not just with his playmaking abilities, but he's just a runner. He just runs for everything.
Which is fascinating, because I thought Manu Molina was quite hard done by Zaragoza. He's one of those players who I thought was quite decent, but wasn't in a great squad. And I think the fans got on his back quite quickly, but he didn't run very much. My sense with him was he was kind of a playmaker. He's lovely on the ball. I thought he was quite talented. He would have played in one of the holding midfield roles and start things going. But he certainly didn't work that hard. And I think that was one of the problems when he wasn't at his best and he wasn't running either. People started to get on his back. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think he'll have a real point to prove this weekend, won't he? Because, he will not be well received in La Romareda. I can assure you of that. And if I were him, I'd be looking to put in a really good performance. And I've been impressed with this year. Again, I haven't recognised that Manu Molina. I have recognised the quality on the ball, but I haven't recognised that work rate because he certainly didn't show it at Zaragoza.
I'll be honest with you, Liam. I can't remember. Was it you, Nick, that shared the stat about how much he runs? It was certainly in our WhatsApp group. And I went, Manu Molina, you're serious? Because I think I know Nick's been a big fan and perhaps a bit longer, but we all love him on this podcast. So the next game, and particularly the last home game, I did just watch him, and he doesn't do lung bursting runs. He's just always moving, and if he's not playing for us, we really miss him. He has been brilliant since probably January last year, because when we signed him, he hadn't had much of a pre-season, and we I'll hold my hands up. I wrote him off by Christmas. I thought, oh well, he's not done it, and then all of a sudden he just sort of exploded into life as this sort of Hollywood passer. And then this year he's been a bit more metronomic, I think was the word I used the other day to describe him. But
absolutely. I think, to be fair, like you say, we noted the Hollywood passes last season in the third tier, and that is a league where you probably don't need to have that tempo and that amount of running that's required, so you can play worldy diagonal balls and lovely lofted passes through to it, especially when you've got a striker like Roberto to get onto the end of him. I think he's done brilliantly to adjust himself this season, because the last time he was at this level as well, with
get to Ibiza in the meantime. I'm sure he didn't come straight from Zaragoza to you, did I think he
no, he was at Ibiza and they got relegated, and
it was quite a promotion, actually, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, he was, and I think he struggled the last time he came back up to Segunda, which is obviously why he ended up back with us. So I think it's good to see that he's having this sort of redemption arc a little bit, and he's changed his tack, and he's got a perfect foil with Luismi as well. Those two have really struck up a beautiful partnership for Malaga, and again, as like you said, Matt, it's partially the reason why Malaga are being as successful-ish as they are this season. It's those two in the middle are just excellent.
Yeah, I think we highlighted Luismi as a really solid signing in the summer when he came on board, that we thought he was a bit thin in terms of recruitment, in terms of quality recruitments, but he was one of those that was very injured a lot last season. But when he did play, he was absolutely key. And let's not forget he was key to a Real Zaragoza side that made the playoffs. He was no small part of that. He did miss a bit of the season towards the end, but even when the playoffs came round, they wanted him back in. So I was a bit surprised, to be honest, that they didn't keep him. I imagine that was his injury record that put them off. But yeah, brilliant signing for you, and I'm not surprised to hear that he's been doing well, because he's a quality player at that level. As you say, if you've got somebody like him who just smashes people alongside, and you've got Manuelino who can pass it, that's a superb sort of, to have your double pivote like that is just what you need, isn't it?
Yeah, just going back to something Liam said earlier, Nick, like obviously he highlighted that Zaragoza are scoring a lot of goals this season. They're the top goal scorers in the league, I believe. They've scored twice as many goals as Malaga. Do you think that sort of free for all, I don't know, not free for all football, but the games have been, there's quite a lot of 3-2s I noticed in your results going both ways at times. But do you think that suits us, Nick? Because we have perhaps struggled with scoring this season, and we've got the best defense in the league. Do you think this openness might be good for us? Because I feel like it might be, actually. Yeah,
I was going to say, it appears to be certainly a clash of opposites at La Romareda this weekend, because like you say, they're 3-4 for goal scoring. We are picking teams off as and when we can by scoring as little as we can, but defensively, especially with that back four with Alfonso Herrero, our hero, behind them, we are really good. I won't lie to Liam, I'm glad to hear that you've got so many missing this weekend. It should make things a little bit easier for us to handle with you guys going forward. But I think especially with what we can do on the counter, sort of lends itself to what I've heard you describe with your back four as well. So I think it will be a bit of a mashing of styles. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and and I really like the approach by the sound of things that Real Zaragoza are taking. It's very Ian Holloway-esque, another niche mention.
It is. I think you always say, don't you, like, move the ball quicker, and you sometimes watch. I've watched a lot of Real Zaragoza over the last 10 years, especially, and a lot of it's been rubbish. And they do look well coached. They do move the ball quickly, and there's always a move the ball quicker, for goodness sake. You know what I mean? And they do move it quickly. They go through the thirds very nicely. I should mention, of course, that Iman Afon is still there, and he has scored 7 in the last 7. So he's a real one to watch out for. He's a really decent player. He's come on in leaps and bounds. I think he's gone away over the summer and bulked out a bit as well. He's very easy knocked off the ball before it. And he's also somebody who was sort of carrying the weight of expectations as the main striker for 2 or 3 seasons, because everything else around him was absolute dross. And now I think he's looked around and thought, you know what, it isn't all down to me. In fact, he's come off the bench a few times this season, whereas he was an absolutely guaranteed starter before, and then he got injured, and then he came back, and it just didn't really work for him. He's always one of those that's promised a lot, but perhaps it's been a bit beyond him. Now he looks absolutely great. It might also be because I think he's in the last year of his contract, and he might fancy a nice big move next summer, a nice big signing on fee somewhere. But no, I think it's more about just he feels more confident, he feels more surrounded by better players, essentially, for the first time in several years. And yeah, he's really one to watch out for, because he's only about 5'10", I would say, but he's just really much stronger and much more difficult to knock off the ball, scoring headers and stuff, which he's never done. So he's a man that's really in form, and I think he's the one to really keep an eye on this weekend, because if there's anything, because Bathar isn't playing and Katie Barney, who's been great when he has played for us in midfield, I think he's a key man to try and silence from your point of view.
Yeah, just something I stumbled upon, and I meant to double check this, but I think, Liam, in the whole of Segunda, Zaragoza do actually have the youngest average sort of starting 11 this season. So that could be, I don't know, does that sound about right to you? Because that might explain why you're slightly erratic, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, very much so. And also, yeah, we've got a couple of really good young players. A lad called Pau Sanz, who usually comes off the bench at the moment, but he's only very young. And Luna, the right back, who's now come in the last few games, he's another youngster. We've had a few that come through the academy, and obviously you know how that feels. It's great, isn't it? It's really, really something that fans can relate to. There's always a lot of talk, and I don't know whether it's the same in Malaga, but a lot of talk that the homegrown players don't get as much respect from the directiva as the stars that come in terms of contracts, etc. There's been a lot of talk about this because of our thon at the moment. People going, give him what he's worth. You know, he's a Zaragoza boy. We need to keep him. And a sense that other players sometimes come in on big wages and essentially couldn't really care less. And the homegrown ones tend to either be sold or offered a fairly piffling sum of money, and therefore decide that their future lies elsewhere. So we'll see what happens with that thon. But yeah, I mean, we everyone loves some young players. We've got some more experienced ones as well. But yeah, some of the key players. And Francois, another superb player. He might be the next one to be sold. He's great, another homegrown prospect. So yeah, doesn't surprise. I didn't know that. But it's a good mix as well. You've got these youngsters with plenty of energy, and then you've got people like Akeche, who was brilliant at Eibar last year. I think he struggled at first, to be honest, because it is a big stage. He's used to being a big fish in a small pond, and now he's Zaragoza. Coming to Zaragoza does require quite a good mentality, because I think the fans are sometimes overly impatient in terms of what they expect from players. It's a bit of a goldfish bowl, you know what I mean? And he seems to be finding his feet, but you don't get long at Zaragoza before the fans start giving you a hard time.
Yeah, Nick, would you say is there any Malaga youngsters are not getting offered as much as the fans think they should and should sign a contract at the moment?
I wonder who you might mention.
He didn't get a birthday contract today, did he? I've not seen that one come out, but yeah, it definitely parallels, let's put it that way, by the sound of things.
And actually, Nick, just on that Zaragoza stat, I was quite surprised. Do you know where Malaga are on that list of average ages?
I was concerned where you were going, because I thought it surely would be us with the amount of 16, 17-year-olds that were playing. But I suppose...
This is why I don't trust the list. Apparently, we're 9th, which sounds mad to me. But
it's going to be that double pivot of Luis and Molina. And
exactly. Molina's about 36 or something, isn't he? Luis must be 33, 34. So those two are well over 30, I think. So yeah, that probably doesn't help.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a quick question about Kaide Barre, but you've sort of answered it, because he was one of my favorite Malaga players when I first moved. And so it's. I mean,
that's an indication, Matt, of how much Victor Fernandez, has called the shots last summer, because he said about 2 years ago, Kaide Barre is the best midfielder in the division. And surprise, surprise, when he became available. And I've got Espanyol friends. Espanyol supporting friends who were like, they couldn't believe that they let him go. They were quite happy to watch him in La Liga. So yeah, that was an absolutely brilliant signing. But unfortunately, and maybe this is why Espanyol did let him go, well, they played pretty much all of last season. He has had a few injuries and he hasn't been on the pitch as much as one would like him to have been. But yeah, he is a quality player. And as I say, I don't think he'll play this weekend, because they've kind of persuaded Albania not to call him up on the basis that he needs to spend more time recovering from his knee injury. So it would be a bit cheeky, wouldn't they, if they chucked him in this weekend, which again is to your advantage, of course.
Just quickly before we go to Malaga, because we have a Spanish Segunda show co-host with us, I'll just quickly ask you, who has been your perhaps surprise package of the season? I suppose that's quite an obvious answer, or was a couple of weeks ago, definitely. But perhaps is there any, I don't know, have any of your preseason predictions changed? I did listen to your preseason prediction show when you did it, but I can't remember where you had the likes of Racing or things like that. What have you made of the season in general?
Yeah, we were fairly unambitious, to be fair, in our predictions. We had the 3 relegated sides to be the top 3, and I think 2 of them are beginning to show signs of why we did that, and I think that's got a lot to do with strikers, Ufuni at Granada, and obviously Luis Javier or Luis Suarez, whatever you want to call him. They are 2 fantastic players who shouldn't really be Well, certainly Luis Suarez shouldn't be in Segunda, I don't think. I think Ortuño has had a go at La Liga and not really made it work for him. So maybe he's one of those that's too good for Segunda and not good enough for La Liga. But yeah, those two we tip to do very well. Cadiz not so well so far. I mean, I have to say, we keep writing Malaga off and they keep proving us wrong. You know, every couple of weeks on the show, we're like, yeah, it's not going to last. Not going to last. They'll soon find themselves a mid-table. And let's be fair, Malaga fans are happy with that. And I'm thinking, I bet they're not. I bet they're dreaming just a little bit. And I think this next month is key, isn't it? Really, as you said, you mentioned at the start of the show, didn't you, that it's a really difficult month for Malaga in terms of fixtures. And if you look at those 6 away draws, apart from Cadiz, would you really say that any of them were big teams in Beckham as well? Granada as well, I suppose, you know, but Granada, you know, at a point where they were just about to get rid of their coach. You can't, you know, you look at the results, you've played 14, haven't you? Have you played 13?
13, yeah.
You played 13, yeah. We can't keep saying, well, you've only played the lesser teams, because you've now played nearly a third of your season. You've now played 2/3 of the teams in the division. So, you know, it's not fair to say, well, you've not played anyone good yet. But, you know, clearly, probably the fixture list has been relatively favourable to you in this first third. And now the next month is about, right, what are we going to do now? I tell you what, at the end of this month, if you're still in a decent position with only 2 or 3 defeats and perhaps a couple more wins, why not? Why not be thinking, you know, Alex keeps saying to me they're overperforming in every single statistic. And I'm like, yeah, but it would be just so Malaga if they just ignore the statistics and basically, deliberately kind of, you know.
Well, but there's the one statistic that I think I mentioned last week is we do have the goalie that makes the most saves in the league, I think. So that I think is San Alfonso Herrero is very much like sort of sullying the statistics in a way. I'll just
to be fair, Guetta's doing the same with Racing. You know, Racing are playing amazingly, but, you know, ultimately, if you look again, they should have conceded more goals. Why have they not? Because Guetta's a very good keeper, and you can't underestimate the importance of it, can you? And every time I watch him, I think, wow, this guy's not like a youngster. He's not like an up-and-coming keeper. He's, 29, 30, isn't he? You know, he's been around a bit, and he's come to Malaga and he's playing the best football of his career. And it's brilliant. You know, I'm so pleased. I love that when that happens, you know, when somebody sort of finally finds their home and feels comfortable and gets the confidence and gets the adulation of the fans that, you know, that he deserves at the moment, because he is a tremendous keeper. And, you know, I can't believe that he can keep you in the playoff hunt single-handedly, but he certainly had a good go at it.
You'd be surprised.
He single-handedly got us promoted last season, to be fair. So it's within his wheelhouse to do so.
And even when it looked like our form was going, he scored a goal.
Indeed, he did. That's right. Yeah, he got the equaliser, didn't he? Late, I remember that. Yeah, 95th minute or something. Yeah, there's nothing he can't do. I do like. I have to say, although overall, I think you know very much. I mean, on Antonito, of course, gets all the headlines, but you know, ultimately, I think it's more. You know, basically, the sum of the parts is what makes it work for Malaga, isn't it? The fact that they're well coached and everybody puts in a shift, and you know, they're no nonsense a lot of the time, aren't they? They get it done. But I do love the likes of La Rubia, and obviously Kevin, your favourite. I mean, La Rubia, especially for me, has really, really stepped up to the plate this year. I've really enjoyed watching him, and I know he's still kind of sometimes plays. Sometimes he's been brought off the bench a few times, doesn't he? I think he's not always been a starter, but I think there's tremendous potential there with him. You know, I think he looks a really, really, really good player.
Well, that's perhaps a good place to start while we switch over to Malaga a little bit, Nick. Because obviously, we did the review show on Tuesday, and me and Luke were quite unanimous in the David La Rubia was our Biznaga, was our player of the match. We thought he was brilliant. Like Liam said, he's sort of started the season off the bench, and he's sort of started to cement a place for him. Obviously, the big thing this past match day was he played as a number 10, and you know, hopefully you listened to me and Luke talking about that. We were very much keep him there. Do you want to give your thoughts on that now? Should La Rubia stay as a number 10 rather than cutting in from the wing?
No, well, I think, to be fair, he's performed admirably in both positions, but that game last week against Cartagena, you know, don't take anything against the opposition, but he was sensational in that pocket, that 10 role, where he probably is a lot more naturally gifted. I think, you know, he can play the wing, but it's not his bag, if that makes sense. So I think if he can continue to prove himself and play at that level that we're starting to see the consistency of, he is still very raw as a footballer. But if he makes it and makes that place his own as well, because apart from maybe Aaron Maloney, he's got no competition for it, then why not? He becomes that Malaga player that we've sort of been expecting to arrive for the past couple of seasons. And, I think no doubt he'll have, a massive amount of confidence from that performance last weekend, and, get the right players around him, and he'll take us to that next level, hopefully.
Yeah, he's done a couple of interviews with some of the press over the past sort of week or so, and it keeps coming up, his good form. And he does, I don't know, the way he's talking, he sounds really confident at the moment. So hopefully, I think there's no doubt he'll definitely start in this game, because obviously Liam touched upon it's international week, but we are missing 3 internationals this week in Aragon Maloney, who's off with Ireland in the 19s, and Antonito and Izan with Spain. I think Antonito might have even scored yesterday. I think I meant to double check that. I think I saw a tweet about it. So well done to him again. Happy birthday again. Is there anyone perhaps from the sort of depths of the squad? Like, because obviously, well, I suppose the first question to ask Nick was, would you start a very similar 11 to what played against Cartagena? Because I can't see any obvious changes from that.
No, pretty much. I know Pace likes to throw in an odd change here and there just to keep things fresh. But I think with the players we've got missing at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me to see a similar starting 11. With the likes of Kevin involved, and I think Dione still is out and out the only striker.
That's my next question, Nick. You know where I was going with my next question? Is it time?
What, for two up top?
No. The Chupete question.
Oh, right. I see. Yes. Well, I heard yours and Luke's chat about this, and I am sold. And I think you sold me a few weeks ago. What is he on? 14 goals in 10 games for Atletico Malagueño now. Yep. Is going to La Romareda the right place to do this?
He's maybe not. But... Look at me, what's it? 3 hat tricks. He's banging them in. I'd be a bit disappointed if he plays this weekend, because actually Atletico Malagueño are playing down in Marbella on the weekend. So I was going to plan and go watch them just to watch him play. So I'd be disappointed if I don't see him play live now.
Yeah. The big thing is when you hear the name and you hear Atletico Malagueño involved, it's just, as we said previously, you're expecting to be similar to Antonito, Aragon Maloney, 16 years old and just scoring for fun in the kids team because that's what he's doing. But he's of an age now where if he was good enough, he would probably be involved in the first team more. That's my only concern with Chupete at the minute, is why isn't he involved in the first team?
Well, I've just thought of something actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liam, but I believe the only team the previous Chupete, as in Humberto Suazo, played for in Spain was Zaragoza.
Absolutely was, yeah.
So this might be the perfect place.
This is it. Stars aligning. Chupete back at La Romareda.
You can't start. Yeah, I mean, you might give him 50 minutes off the bench, maybe. I mean, why not? I mean, but what does that say to Baturina, really? I mean, it doesn't really. I think you've got to give Baturina a bit more of a chance, haven't you? I mean, he's a player who's clearly very low on confidence at the moment, and you've got Castel as well. I think both of them would be slightly perturbed if they saw, a young lad from Atletico Malagueño jumping the queue ahead of them.
They've had their chance and they've not taken it. Although actually, I thought Rocco was okay off the bench this weekend, and he scored in the cup the week before, but he's not. He's not
the answer. Castell's lovely. I still think there is a player in Castel, but I just don't know if there is a
goal scorer.
A goal scorer, or whether he truly, with want of a better word, gives a shit. If I'm honest, we described him as the football backpacker, didn't we, in the summer when he arrived? And he talks a good game, but is he here actually to do the job? Say like Dione's trying to do, but bless Dione, he's playing at a level well above where he should be, performing admirably, and he's obviously of a certain age as well. So, maybe having a youngster come on who's free scoring could be the answer, but we just need to go out in January and sign someone. That's got to be the only answer for me. If we've got genuine aspirations of kicking on and being in that playoff chase, then a striker's got to be top of our list in January.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. You can't. As you say, there's only so many games you can win 1-0, isn't there? Really, you will start to lose a few games 1-0 and quickly drop off the pace. You do need to create more chances, and then when you create more chances, you need somebody who's going to regularly put them away. Carlos Pulgar, just from a neutral observer, I really liked him last season. Is he considered to have reached his level at Primera Federación, or?
Well, I had one of my next questions for Nick was going to be, where do we stand on the right back position? Because essentially it's sort of just pendulums back and forth every 2 or 3 weeks, doesn't it, Nick? Where I think I'm a little bit biased. I've always been more of a Joaquin fan, but I think Puga's been good as well. I just think Joaquin's a bit more interesting.
Yeah. You're an official part of the Joaquin Gabilondo fan club as well, aren't you, from the Baracaldo days? I'm a pure Pugalist for myself, my own sins. I naturally prefer...
That's an impressive little phrase. To be fair, on the other side as well, Pastor, it was pretty consistent. Andorra, I know they went down, but, he's a decent fullback, I think,
Problem with him now really is Einar and Monte have really sort of struck up again. They were good probably in the middle of last season, and they had a bit of a wobble together, but they've been really good the last 2 games. But as Nick will know, I've said I think the one I enjoy watching the most is probably Pastor. He's a little bit wilder than the other 2, and you don't really know what to do, but he
has his to coin a meme from the noughties. He has his Leroy Jenkins moment, doesn't he, where he just disappears on a run, and then I think Monte just looks around and goes, "Where the fuck are you going?" and I think, but he just likes to play out of the back that way, which I think actually we do need. We do need it, but it's the getting back bit that concerns me about Pastor. Whereas Einar is just solid as a rock when he's playing alongside Monte. To be fair to him,
could you not play Pastor on the left side defence, or is Sanchez an absolute? I mean, as a fullback.
No, Victor's probably our main fullback. Danny Sanchez came in this weekend and was probably had his best game after we've been a bit down on him all season. We liked his heart last year, and he was fine last year, but it's looked a bit of a step up. But he was very good last weekend. Yeah, I've never really seen Pastor as a left back, but I can't see why not. He does get up and down the pitch a bit. I'd be open to seeing that. Perhaps just one other question I was going to ask about the Malaga team, Nick, is obviously those 3 players we've got missing. Aaron and Antonito have obviously started quite a few games at the start of the season and have come off the bench a lot. Izan's been starting games and come off the bench a lot. They're not there. So that's a big chunk of our bench missing. Do you think this is perhaps a game where the likes of, I don't know, Romani or Danny Lorenzo really have to step up, because these youngsters are sort of getting in their way a bit now, and deservedly so?
Undoubtedly, they both have to. I think Danny Lorenzo, is partially in his own head at the minute, and we saw flashes and not just flashes, consistency from him last season as to what he can do. Similar to kind of the opposite of what Larrubia did last season to this season. So he just needs to get back on it and pick up where he left off. Romani, for me, given the fanfare and given where he's come from, and obviously the adulation that he has and the memories that we have from that COVID season, he's on the border of flopping for me, similar to bloody Juan Hernandez did last season. Came in and had one good game and then just disappeared for the rest of the season. He really seems out of favour, and I know he didn't have the best of seasons last season. I think he was on loan at Tenerife, wasn't he? But yeah,
I mean, I think Romani is flattered to see for a long time, to be honest. If I'm honest, he didn't do much at Eibar. He didn't. I mean, I know they had a good side and they made the playoffs a couple of years running and pushing for automatic promotion, but he wasn't a major figure there either. And as you said, he went to Tenerife last year, didn't really shine there either. I think he has had that one good spell. I think with Malaga, even at Almeria, he didn't really set the world on fire. So yeah, he's one of those, isn't it? You could say he's flopped, but I think probably he's pretty much carrying on as he has been doing for the last few seasons. It's just that Malaga fans haven't seen those last few seasons very much.
Rose tinted glasses.
Absolutely, yeah. The blue and white tinted glasses, definitely. But there you go. It does sound like we've got, on paper and from what you've told us, Liam, and sort of the way Malaga are playing at the moment, it sounds like we should have a good game on our hands. So hopefully that's the case. So
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well, Matt, is that we, although we've played some really good sides, we lost 3 in a row before our last victory. So again, an early goal. As mentioned before about they're a great set of fans in many ways, the Zaragoza fans, but they're not always the most patient bunch of fans. And I think an early goal for Malaga in this game, given that, as I say, we've lost 3 in a row against admittedly, Racing de Santander and Almeria and I can't remember who the third one was, but 3 sides that are right at the top. It doesn't matter. It's still 3 home defeats in the last 4. They won the last game against Granada, but it's psychologically to go behind again at home might test the patience of the fans and might actually throw a few question marks into the Zaragoza's play as well. So I think that would be a target for Pellicer, there would be to be tight and try and get an early goal and then see where it goes from there.
Yeah, so just because we've referenced it a couple of times, like you've just said, then the teams you've recently lost to, we are playing a lot of those teams. So we've got obviously Zaragoza this weekend, then we've got Racing at home the weekend after. Then we've got, I think we've got the double in like the Valencia region of Levante, the abandoned or postponed game, and Castellón away, and then Almeria at home. I know I've referenced, we've got a tough run coming up. And then actually, I think we go to Burgos away, which is never an easy one to go to either. So, yes, it's like you said, Liam, when we hit this winter break, we'll know what this Malaga team is, I think. So, but we'll wrap things up.
And Real 14 just before Christmas as well. We're lovely Christmas, that will be. Real Sporting just before Christmas too.
Yeah. Trip up north, yeah, exactly. We will finish things up there. So obviously we will not let you go, Liam, and I'm sure your co-host Alex will be annoyed if you don't. Here's your opportunity to plug the Spanish Segunda show for anyone that doesn't know what it is.
It's just a show that comes out every week, usually on Tuesday morning. I think it drops into most people's inboxes or however into their podcast feeds. It just covers the whole division. We don't talk about Malaga in great detail every week because we promised to talk about all 22 teams in the league, and our show is 30 to 40 minutes. So realistically, we're going to cover probably 6 or 8 teams in detail every week, and we'll also mention all the other teams, but on that basis, we also have a Patreon show if you're really dedicated, and pretty much every team gets mentioned across the 2 shows. But yeah, I think it's we certainly talk a lot about Malaga, and as I say, we talk quite a lot about Malaga. How on earth are they still only lost 1 game? Surely this will change soon. This wasn't part of the plan, but obviously delighted that that's the case. I know speaking to Nick pre-season, he was like, I just don't want to go down this season, and brilliant that at this stage there's already a decent amount of points on the board, and you can look at getting another 30 rather than thinking, oh my goodness, we've got, imagine a Cartagena situation, it's brilliant that Malaga have made a good start, and we certainly would love to see them stay with us. And it's a brilliant fan base and a great place to go and watch football. And as I say, I really, really hope that we can go and watch Malaga play when we do our trip to Spain, Spanish Segunda show trip to Spain. And guess who Malaga are playing that weekend, Matt?
Go on.
Real Zaragoza. That's well timed, isn't it? I must say as well, on the back of that, obviously we get asked a lot about. I know, Matt, your understanding of Spanish is a lot better than mine. I mean, I'm still learning, but you guys also do a Spanish Segunda podcast in Spanish, which I assume don't mirror each other exactly, but a great place if you are learning Spanish, and obviously on a topic that which people are generally interested in. If you listen to Spanish Segunda show or the Giri cast, go and listen to it in Spanish if you're practicing. I know I tend to dip in and out and try my best, but that must be hard as well, Liam, actually. Just, I know you're both fluent Spanish speakers, but in terms of like trying to do both at the same time, it's is it repetitive or is it
It's hard, yeah, exactly, because you're thinking, well, we're looking to hit a different audience in some ways, but then obviously you've always got that sort of credibility side of things, haven't you? And we sort of started that off first of all to sort of show people, well, we can, if we come to a game and the only people you've got available to speak to us in terms of players or coaches only speak Spanish, then look at us, we'll have a chat with you in Spanish and we'll extend that side of, what we offer. But yeah, there's always going to be a slight issue in terms of, you say, crossover, and you think, well, quite a few people listen to our show in English are Spanish. Do they really want to go and listen to us saying some of the same things? So we gave it a different focus. We tended to focus on, we made it a lot shorter as well. We're doing 10 to 15 minutes. And, we just have one good thing, one bad thing, or bueno or malo every week, and try and focus on that and try and cover something different. And sometimes there's an overlap, and sometimes, there is a little bit of repetition in there. So apologies to those who listen to both. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to do. And we've really enjoyed going over to Spain. And as I say, we haven't been to Malaga quite a while. In fact, we've never been together to a game, and we're not unfortunately going to make it this weekend because you're not there. Weekend after next, actually, we're in Malaga. But of course, in the La Liga's infinite wisdom, the games kick off too close to each other. So we're in Cordoba, having been invited to go and watch a game at Cordoba. And I think the Malaga game kicks off 2 hours before or 2 hours afterwards or something. So it's completely impossible and very frustrating because we were really looking forward to coming to Malaga as well, weekend after next.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city, Cordoba. So I'm sure you'll be fine there too. And I think we've sort of not been so complimentary about their football ground on this podcast. A bit of a strange one. I don't think it's as bad as some of the other guys made out, but it's an interesting one. But we'll leave it.
I saw an old picture of it today, actually, and it looked better when it was old.
Yeah, I saw that came up on my feed as well. Yeah. Anyway,
I think there are more traditional sides out there to watch than Cordoba. I have to say, I think they're obviously much better to watch at home because they're much better at home than they are away. They're the worst team away in the division, aren't they, in terms of their form? But yeah, they're not Castellon. But then who is?
Okay, right. Thank you, Liam, for joining us again. It's been great to have you on. We'll hopefully have you back on for the return leg, and maybe we'll even get you on a Vamos a la Rosaleda episode live from La Rosaleda on match day after Christmas when you come over.
Yeah, it's last weekend in January, so I'd love to do that. It'd be brilliant. So I'm really looking forward to it. Say, please, La Liga, do not put the game on the Friday night or the Monday night. I don't think you've had one all season, have you, on the Friday night at home or the Monday night at home? I'm not sure you've had a single Friday night, Monday night game at La Rosaleda. So it would just be absolutely typical, wouldn't it, if that particular game were chosen as the one that's that night before I arrive or after I leave. Never mind. Fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you, Liam, and thank you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Matt. To steal maybe Liam's sign off from the Spanish Segunda, hasta la próxima.
You're very welcome to steal it. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for listening. Do all the things we usually ask you to do and go and subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube. Tell your friends, give us a 5-star review and all that sort of stuff. And we will see you soon. Adios and vamos Malaga.